I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You are the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Life Today Live. I am Jordan Murphy, and whether it's your first time or your 100th time, we are so excited to have you on the program today. Today, we get a wonderful opportunity to just love on our little ones that are navigating big things in their life and big emotions through Sissy Goff's new book, A Lesson in Courage, Lucy Learns to Be Brave. So buckle up. We are so excited to welcome Sissy Goff on the program with us today.
Jordan, I'm so honored to be here with you guys.
Yes, we're so excited. How's your day going today?
It's going great. It's a rainy day in Nashville, but yesterday was Easter as we're together, and what a great celebration to get to have every year.
Absolutely. It just kind of makes it, whatever the weather is like, there's so much joy around and so much celebration. It's, there's sunshine in our hearts and all around us. So we'll take it. We'll take it where we can get it, right?
Well, yes, we will.
I would just love to dive right in. For people that don't know you, where did your passion for children come from?
Well, this is kind of a silly story. So I am of an age, I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And back then, Jordan, you're not even going to be able to relate to this. But when I was growing up, like a lot of people my age, our parents let us watch soap operas. It was just a thing. We all kind of watched soap operas. And I even got to skip school for some important weddings of soap opera characters. How about that?
I love that.
It was so silly. And also in the 70s and 80s, there weren't a lot of people talking about counseling, therapy. We just hadn't heard much about it. And there was a character on Days of Our Lives named Marlena, and she was a child psychologist. And it was the first time I ever heard of it. And I thought, well, that would be the most amazing job in the world, to get to help kids and talk to kids all day, every day. And so as God does, he took that little silly seed of Marlena being a child psychologist. I never would have known that God would have used a soap opera, but he did. And door after door after door opened. And I am from Arkansas, and I moved to Nashville to go to grad school at Vanderbilt. And I got to do this internship at a place called Daystar Counseling Ministries, where now we're in a little yellow house with a white picket fence. We were trying to do that back then, but we were in an office building. But I sat with my boss today, who was the founder of Daystar, with tears in my eyes the whole time, thinking, I never knew something like this existed, where we get to help kids, and it's really relational and really professional at the same time, and clinical. And I mean, it's just all these beautiful, rich things coming together. And yeah, I mean, I get to sit with kids all day long helping them, and I get to take my dog to work. So I don't know that there's a whole lot better than that.
Girl, sign me up. I was sharing earlier, I am not a mother yet, but I am a fur mama. And that is like the most important thing to me. I rescued my dog Zoe back in 2021, and she's going to be 5 this year. I've shed so many tears about it.
Yes.
But there is nothing more sweet than a little dog. And I'll tell you, like,
yes.
I went through so many things in my college years, and for her to be able to be there for that, like, she just means so much to me. And so I can't imagine how your little dog helps these kiddos navigate so many emotional things. What benefits have you seen of having your little dog with you? And tell us all about your dog. Like, I want to hear the name and the breed and the age, everything, all the things.
You're so sweet. Well, so I am on my 3rd dog that has worked with me, because I've been doing this work for 3 decades. And so the book is about my 2nd dog named Lucy, who was amazing. She was a little Havanese. And literally the first day I met her, she stuck a paw out, like she was waving at me. And when we did puppy school, they said, if you will start to praise her when she does it and call it a wave, then she'll wave on command.
Oh, wow.
And so at Daystar, I mean, kids are so scared to go to counseling so much of the time. And they're supposed to talk to some grown-up they've never met about these huge things going on inside of them. And so we actually have 7 dogs on staff, 13 humans. We have 2,000 families that come to Daystar currently. But for a kid to walk in this building and the first thing they see is a dog, and I would hold Lucy and say, Lucy, will you wave at so-and-so? And she just would wave her little paws. And I mean, they would melt into a puddle and feel so safe and secure in a way that I think they wouldn't have otherwise. And now I have my second Havanese named Patches, who is 1.5, and she's a little bit bad. She's still working on her therapy dog skills and disposition. But it's the same. I mean, it is unbelievable how if I sit with a teenager, for example, I have a 13-year-old who comes in for the first time, feels nervous, maybe even a little defensive, not ready to enter into this whole thing. But if I sit on the floor and say, oh, Patches would love to play with you, can we sit on the floor for a minute? And all of a sudden they find themselves talking to me, even though they didn't necessarily mean to, because this amazing dog softened them as they're there for counseling. And so they really do make such a difference. And I mean, you know these things, Jordan. From a chemical standpoint, it is phenomenal what dogs will do. Yes. When we are petting a dog, our brain secretes more oxytocins, which are considered the nurturing hormone, which help ease anxiety. And it does the same for dogs. When we're petting them, there are more oxytocins released in their little bodies. So there are all these amazing things they do. Dogs even prevent cognitive decline. So every age, I mean, there are fabulous studies about the benefits of dogs for kids and for grown-ups too.
I'm always telling everybody, oh, you should get a dog. You should get a dog. You should get a dog. It works great for me that my parents don't have a dog because then they love to watch Zoe anytime I need to go somewhere.
Yes, that's great.
You know, she's a great little grand dog. But yeah, I mean, that is just so incredible. Could you let us know what age range of kiddos are you working with on the day-to-day basis?
We see kids from about 8 up to 18.
Wow.
So most ages of kids. Younger than that, they really need to do something called play therapy because 50 minutes of talking is hard for a 5-year-old. But once they get up to about 8 years old, we see them in our offices. And so we have a lot of different therapists that work with different ages, and it is a gift to get to work with kids. I love it.
Absolutely. And what are some of the things that these kiddos are walking in that you're helping them navigate?
Really everything imaginable from grief and loss. We were very involved. We're in Nashville, and so we were very involved with the Covenant shooting. That's a school I've gotten to speak at a few times, and over the years, and the head of school who was killed was a dear friend, and and we're a nonprofit, and so we got to offer free counseling to those kids for as long as they would need it. Until they graduated from high school. So we have a lot of Covenant kids anytime you walk through the doors of Daystar. And then we have kids whose parents have gotten divorced, who are depressed for one reason or another. We have a lot of kids who are dealing with anxiety. And then we have kids who their parents just want them to have another grown-up in their life to talk to. Yeah. I think my favorite conversation ever, this mom brought her daughter in to see me, and the daughter said, Mom, I don't want to go to counseling. Why do I have to do that? And the mom's answer, which I thought was so beautiful, she said, honey, my job as your parent is to build your team. And so I have people on your physical team that are your doctors. I have people on your academic team that are your teachers. Of course, I'm going to have people on your emotional team that are going to be your counselors over time. And so we're just going to start this, and you're going to build this relationship. And then when you need it, you're going to go back in. And then sometimes we won't go for a while, but I just want you to have somebody on your team.
Wow.
Awesome.
I'm gobsmacked by that. I love that because a lot of times, and my dad explained this to me when I was walking through depression and anxiety myself. He said, Jordan, if you had a broken arm, would you just be walking around with a broken arm? No, you would not. You would go to a doctor.
Way to go, your dad.
You would get help, you know? And so we have such a stigma around mental health, which I'm so grateful that in, the past couple of years, there's been a lot of awareness and a lot more conversation, and especially down to the ages of like adolescence. And I think that is so important because if you just go around thinking that something is wrong with you, or you just think that this is how life is supposed to be, that can be so damaging and so challenging. And just God bless you guys for working with the kiddos that have endured that shooting. And my condolences to the community and to your family and to all of the families. Such an incredibly devastating thing to navigate. And I'm sure through that and the other things that kids endure, that the CDC has seen recently that anxiety and depression has been on the rise in younger and younger children. So how do parents and mentors and friends or siblings help the little ones in their lives just be more brave and be more resilient these days?
I love that you're asking that question because you're right. I mean, we are now looking at 1 in 4 kids, 1 in 3 adolescents are dealing with anxiety. And to your point, girls are twice as likely as boys to deal with it. Boys are actually taken to get help more, which is, I think, really fascinating. And as adults, 1 in 3 of us. And so it is so pervasive in our world. And pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, I mean, the way that God so beautifully works in his timing, I started writing some books about anxiety before it started that came out right then. And so I have a book for parents and adults about their life. I have a book about raising worry-free girls because it's so prevalent among girls. I have one for teenage girls. I have one for elementary school age girls called Braver, Stronger, Smarter. And then I wrote this book, Lucy, for girls even younger than that, because we know if we can get on the front side of it, the more work we can do preventatively, the better. And I mean, as you said, and I would be curious how this would resonate with you, but I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years. And out of all of the years, all of the kids I've seen who are anxious, every single one of them has a few things in common. And I would say every grown-up too. They're really bright. They're really conscientious. They try really hard. They care so much. They're the most amazing kinds of kids. And it's like the volume is turned up so high on all that caring, they just can't figure out how to turn it down. And so it translates to worry. And because they're so conscientious and care so much, they often are kids, grown-ups, us, who don't say things like, I felt really angry when, I felt really disappointed. We try to live on the positive side of emotions. And so then those emotions get stuffed, the more what we would have considered negative ones get kind of stuffed and come out as anxiety. And so the more we can help kids learn to name and navigate their emotions earlier on, the more preventative work we're going to do later for when some of us do battle anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to the quote unquote bigger things in life,
Yes.
But when you're little, everything feels so big, because
I know.
your world is little. That's your world,
Yes.
your whole world. And I love little kids, and I love your heart and your passion. And if I was coming into your office and I was struggling with anxiety, you're talking about, naming the emotion. Could you walk us through some of those steps of, okay, once we name the emotion, like what do we do with it? Like, does that help us to stop feeling it, or where do we go from there?
Yes, I love that you're asking that question. Yeah, I would have, if you were to come into my office, I would have a feelings chart sitting on my coffee table. So Lucy Learns to Be Brave. There's another book called Owen Learns He Has What It Takes, a companion book. And in it, there's a feelings chart of all yellow lab faces, which you would love, particularly being a lab mama. And so we would start with naming. And then part of what happens for kids is when they don't understand the feelings and don't start to regulate the feelings, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so in Lucy's little book, I have another tool I use that's a thermometer because Lucy, my little Havanese, had a lot of fear, which is fun to talk about with kids because they can relate so much. And I mean, it was fears of bigger dogs. It was fears of being away from me early on, which so many kids are afraid of being away from their parents. And Lucy had this really interesting fear of hiccups. No, do not have a clue. But the first time I ever figured it out, I was meeting with this woman, bless her heart. I'd never met her before. She came in to talk to me about her daughter. And Lucy I had the hiccups. And so Lucy looked up at me like, what is happening to you? And then jumps in the woman's lap. And then I can't get rid of them. And then eventually she jumps on the back of the chair and puts her feet on the woman's shoulders and head, like trying to get as far away from me as she could get. I felt like I had to refund the woman because my dog was being so crazy. But I talk about in the book that fear tries to play tricks on us and make us think we're not going to be okay in the midst of these really big things that sometimes aren't as big as they feel like. And so there's a thermometer to help kids realize, okay, how big a deal is this really? Is it a little deal that feels medium, a medium deal that feels big, or a big thing that feels impossible? And helping them then learn tools to bring the thermometer back down. And so some of my favorites, I'll just give you my 2 favorite go-tos in a moment that kids get really anxious. And let me do a little more biology for just a second. So for any of us, Jordan, you know all this, but when we're having a calmer moment, we have blood flowing all throughout our brain, including going to the prefrontal cortex that helps us think rationally and manage our emotions. When we get anxious, when kids get anxious, the blood vessels in our brain constrict and it shifts the blood away from the prefrontal cortex and to the amygdala. And the amygdala is the fight or flight.
Listen. Yep, I'm sorry. I'm so enthralled in this. And those science classes, girl, that was a while back for me. So I'm learning just alongside everybody else today.
Well,
fight
I
or flight,
known it
or
if
freeze, right?
There you go. See,
and that's what just happened to me. So I mean, I'm just being a living example today.
You are.
I had no idea.
I made your amygdala.
Yeah,
activated.
I had no idea that restricts the blood flow to the.
Yes,
that's insane.
Isn't that wild? And so, like, parents will say to me, my child's like a crazy person when they get to this place. Right. We're like crazy people because our thinking, rational brain isn't getting blood.
Wow.
And so when we can, do the hokey pokey as it sounds, when we can take deep breaths and just breathe differently, our blood vessels in our brain dilate again and it shifts the blood flow back to the prefrontal cortex. So that's where I always start with kids. I will teach them some deep breathing. And the way that we teach it often is it's called square breathing. Now with boys, sometimes we call it combat breathing because the Navy SEALs actually use it.
Wow.
And boys think it sounds cooler if it's called combat
I'm
breathing.
doing my combat breathing.
There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you would draw a square on your leg, and I'm going to tell you why on your leg in just a second, but you would draw a slow square on your leg, and with each line of the square, you're going to breathe a different way. So we would breathe in and count to 4. Pause in the corner for 4 seconds. Do the next line, breathe out, count to 4. Pause in the corner for 4 seconds. I can't tell if I'm doing the timing right. Breathe in, count to 4. Pause in the corner for 4 seconds. And breathe out and count to 4. And 20 seconds of deep breathing begins the process of resetting the amygdala.
Wow.
So just 20 seconds. So when we can have kids do that, that's where we always start. And then we would move to what are called grounding techniques because anxiety really is about the past and the future. So, oh no, I did this terrible thing, or oh no, I can't do this, or what's going to happen to me, or am I going to be okay? And we want to pull kids, we want to pull ourselves back into the present. So I do this myself sometimes when I get really anxious too. I mean, if I'm about to give a speech in front of 1,000 people, you would find me standing over to the side doing some square breathing.
Girl, yes.
And then grounding techniques. And my favorite one is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 game. So anything sensory related that uses our senses that God gave us is going to pull us back into the present. So if I would do this myself or say to a kid, tell me 5 things you see right now. So you would have them pick out, I see that building in the back of your screen. I see 5 different things. Tell me 4 things you hear. Tell me 3 things you feel from a tactile sense. Tell me 2 things you smell and 1 thing you taste. So it's all 5 of the senses. And Jordan, if I were going to really make you answer those questions right now, especially the taste and smell, it requires us to do a lot of focusing.
Yes.
And so rather than looping around our anxious thoughts, it brings us into the present moment and it pulls us out of the anxiety. So those are my 2 tricks I always start with kids or grownups in my office.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible because when I was in college, I was in the choral program and they would have us start with the box breathing. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is wonderful. But I had no idea what it was for and what it does. So when that's explained to me, it's kind of just like a clicking, And I've heard of grounding techniques, but I've never had the examples. And I think that's so, so, so powerful. And it's just these little tools in your toolbox that you can bring out when you're needing them. Could we go back to, you said you would talk to us about the tracing on the leg. Where does that come in?
Oh, yeah, that's the sensory.
Okay.
So because it's a tactile thing, I'm drawing the box on my leg, then I'm engaging my senses in a different way too. So it's helpful in 2 ways.
Wow. is powerful. The senses are so powerful. Can we go back to, because I'm thinking through the young boys and girls that could be, discovering these tools for the first time. But something that you mentioned earlier was that boys are brought in earlier than girls, or more often than girls. That kind of just blew my mind, because I honestly would think it would be the opposite. Why is that? Why have you seen that kind of trend?
Well, I read a study years ago that I thought was so fascinating that talked about how when something goes wrong in a boy's world, he blames someone else. And when something goes wrong in a girl's world, she blames
herself.
Amen.
Of course, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so I think with emotions, boys tend to get bigger and go outward. And so they're going to be acting out in school more when they're feeling anxious. And those girls that we were talking about earlier, those sweet, perfectionistic, tend to implode and try and get everything right in school, do everything the teacher says. And so parents will go to parent-teacher conferences and the teacher says, I wish every child in my class was like your daughter. And it's really because those sweet girls are so anxious internally. And we often don't notice it because they're just trying to fly below the radar.
Yeah. Bless their hearts. I definitely feel like that was for sure me. And then I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagrams. I feel like that just manifests type 3, the achievers.
You're a 3? Yes.
Well,
yes.
I have been typed as a 3, but then when I retook years later, I was typed as a 6. So I don't know. I mean, but I definitely have been a 3 in my life, because if you can, achieve and you can be doing well, then people think you're doing great. And then when you know that other people think you're doing great, well, then I must be doing great, And so when these parents are seeing that their daughters are doing so well and they're getting great feedback, and from, a surface level, they think that everything is going fine. When do those things typically start to implode? What can be some little signs that we look for? Or is it an age? Is it middle school where girls start to kind of act out and those feelings start to become more outward? Or where do we go with our young women?
So the average age of onset used to be 8. Now we're seeing it drop to 6 with signs as young as 4 and 5, which is, again, why we wrote these children's books. So we could start really early having this conversation. And there are conversation starters in the back of the book. I have a 6 and a 3-year-old nephew, and they live 3 blocks from me. And I was with them last night. I was with my sister putting the boys to bed, and we read Lucy. And the 3-year-old was talking about different feelings and asking questions and answering my questions from the back of the book. And so I think starting the conversation as early as we can, but 2 things to watch for primarily. One is, I think early on, girls, they'll go to the parent-teacher conferences and the teacher will say, your daughter is so exemplary. But at home, they can sometimes be more explosive. And girls reserve their most negative emotions for home. That is a data-driven fact, because they feel safe. It's really a backhanded compliment, any of you parents who are listening. But when that happens, and Jordan, I wonder if you would feel the same way. I'm a 1 on the Enneagram, so I'm a perfectionist.
Okay. Yeah.
And my parents didn't know all this. We didn't know this years ago. Right. But I think that anger that used to be directed outward is now directed inward.
Yep.
And so there is a point that shifts for girls. So I will say to parents of littles often, if you're seeing evidence of it, what a gift to your daughter for the rest of her life. If you can teach her to regulate the anger and to learn to give herself grace now, that will change the game for her. And so I think seeing anger, seeing outbursts is a way we recognize it. Also, with kids in my office, I will talk about anxious thoughts like the one-loop roller coaster at the fair. We all have dozens of intrusive thoughts every single day. Worst case scenario thoughts. I really blew that thought. And if we're not anxious, the thought comes in and it goes right back out. Oh, okay. If we are anxious, the thought comes in and it gets on that loop. Yep. Yeah. And goes around and around and around. And it's fascinating because if we could take kids across development, I could basically guess what their loop would be based on their age, because it's the scariest thing you can imagine at any age. So my parents being away from me for little bitties, they get a little bit older, and I can't count the amount of kids who threw up or saw somebody throw up at a birthday party, and now they think every time their tummy feels the least bit funky, they think, oh no, I'm going to throw up, and they're anxious about throwing up. And they get a little bit older. I know, and it morphs again. And so when you hear kids stuck and looping around the same thing, that is always a telltale sign that there's more anxiety underneath.
Man, I love this. This is so helpful because even if you don't have little kids, I've realized as I'm, growing into adulthood, we are all just little kids on the inside. Like there is an inner child in all of us. And so if this is something that maybe hasn't been healed for you in the past, you can still heal your inner child now. And so I think this is so powerful that even if somebody doesn't have kids or have kids around them, they have that inside of them. And so being able to learn these tools, because it's better now than ever, and such a godsend. And so thank you so much. Is there anything that you would love to just leave our audience with today?
Well, the Lucy book, where I went with this is really based on something that Melissa, who is our founding director of Daystar, said with a group of kids. And she said, let me say that differently. She said, courage isn't the antidote to anxiety, but trust is.
Oh, wow.
And what I love about that is courage feels like something we have to drum up. I have to kind of pull myself up by my bootstraps and have courage. Whereas trust feels dependent on a God who loves me and who's going to take care of me. And so with this little children's book, that's where I go with it, is when Lucy learns that she's safe and secure in my love as her mom and in God's love, she's freed up to be who God made her to be. And I think the same is really true for all of us. The more I can trust in God's love and grace and care for me, the more I'm freed up to be the person he made me to be.
That's so powerful. I love that. I'm going to take that. I'm going to write that down and just look at it every single day, because it's the things that you choose to feed yourself. And
yes,
I just thank you so much, because this has just unlocked so many things for me. And I'm so excited to just share with people that I love, but also just to kind of work on that inner child inside of myself as well. And so just thank you. Today was such a blessing. You guys, make sure that you go out and you get a lesson in courage. Lucy Learns to Be Brave by Sissy Goff. And you can also get connected with her on her website, raisingboysandgirls.com. It was such a pleasure to be with you all today. We love you on Live Today Live. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you next time. Have a beautiful and blessed rest of your day.
There is no distance in prayer. You don't have to go anywhere or be in any specific place. It is the believing of the heart. It is faith.